Yeah, it's wild times. It's certainly the craziest stretch I've been through in my professional career. It really boils down to the overall cost of claims and how much money has been paid out by insurance companies, both for auto and home. And not just from the last year, but this has been something that's been building up since I'd say 2020. I mean, the last several years. Costs are just rising at an insane rate.
Welcome to your Landlord Resource Podcast. Many moons ago, when I started as a landlord, I was as green as it gets. I may have had my real estate license, but I lacked confidence and the hands-on experience needed when it came to dealing with tenants, leases, maintenance, and bookkeeping. After many failed attempts, fast forward to today, Kevin and I have doubled our doors and created an organized, professionally operated rental property business. Want to go from overwhelmed to confident? If you're an ambitious landlord or maybe one in the making, join us as we provide strategies and teach actionable steps to help you reach your goals and the lifestyle you desire, all while building a streamlined and profitable rental property business. This is your Landlord Resource Podcast. Hey there, landlords, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Stacy, and I'm here with my husband, Kevin, who is the king of editing.
Yeah, well, for the listeners who aren't aware of how podcast editing goes, it's not hard. It's just kind of time consuming. I'm always in awe of how many ums and knows the system pulls out of our audio.
Well, we have an awesome episode today. We are so excited to be interviewing our very first podcast guest. Let me give you some background information on him. His name is Ryan Bravo of the Bravo Agency. He and his brother Michael are our insurance brokers and agents. They, along with their team, are a crucial part of the protection and success of our personal and business assets. So Ryan and Michael started working under their father in 2008 and 2010, respectively. Their dad, Ralph, was my first and remained my only insurance agent. And get this, he was the very first broker or agent inducted into the Farmers Insurance Hall of Fame in 2014. I think that's pretty cool. That man won all kinds of insurance awards. And he taught his sons right because they are doing very well in the business today.
They really are. Ryan and Michael took over the business from their father, Ralph, when he sadly and suddenly passed away in 2016. Since then, they've increased premiums from $7 million to $12 million. They've made the Farmers Insurance President's Council, which is an achievement only given to about 150 agents in the entire country each year. They have also qualified for the $1 Million Roundtable event 5 times, which is a life insurance and financial services event. And of all the brokers, agents in the world, only about 5,000 people globally qualify for that event each year. Lastly, they have a team of 7 people who specialize in rental properties, commercial insurance, life insurance, and financial services.
Yeah, they're super impressive, and we love their team. Notice how in the bio we're mentioning that he has a team and not a staff? So serious business owners know that where they may lead, they need a good team around them in order to succeed. And that's just one example of how these guys are different. They are focused and very well educated, not only in the field of all the various kinds of insurance, but the financial investment side as well. They are kind, and they have picked up where their dad left off and have continued to make us feel like we are what matters most when we call. So with that, let's get to the Q&A session with Ryan Bravo, one of the top agents for Farmers Insurance.
Hey, Ryan, thanks for joining us today.
I appreciate you having me, guys. Thank you.
Of course. Well, aren't you the lucky one? Our first podcast guest.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
That's cool.
Hopefully I don't disappoint.
Want to let everybody know that you handle our home, auto, life insurance, all of our business needs, including commercial and umbrella policies. Plus, you also manage investments for us. So we would say without you and your brother Michael, you're absolute pros. We don't know where we'd be without you guys.
I appreciate that. And we appreciate working with you guys. You guys have been like family for so many years. So no, this is great. We love working with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I knew your dad and started working with him in the mid 90s, I think it was. And he took such good care of our family. And then when you and your brother took over, Michael, the transition was seamless and you guys are killing it. So I let me ask you this. It seems that the insurance industry has been getting a lot of attention lately. Costs are rising, coverage is hard to get, and many of the large heavy hitter insurance companies are pulling out of certain states. Can you tell us about your thoughts on the current state of the insurance industry and where it's headed?
Yeah, it's wild times. It's certainly the craziest stretch I've been through in my professional career. It really boils down to the overall cost of claims and how much money has been paid out by insurance companies, both for auto and home. And not just from the last year, but this has been something that's been building up since I'd say 2020. I mean, the last several years. Costs are just rising at an insane rate. There's a bunch of reasons for that. Number one, inflation is a big one. We're all feeling that, right? With the price of
Right.
pretty much everything. Gas, you go to the grocery store, eggs are insane. I mean, we're all feeling that with the inflation costs going up. Construction costs have gone way up. I was reading an article where it mentioned there was a 26% increase in the cost of construction materials that's 2020 to 2021 alone.
Yeah, we felt that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean that includes lumber, drywall, roofing materials, piping. All the things you'd need to build a house are just insanely expensive. And the last thing is natural disasters have been happening at a crazier rate than ever. Really, we all know about the wildfires in California, but they're really happening all over North America. I mean, we saw in the news the New York skyline from the Canada wildfires. In California, we had those rainstorms at the beginning of the year. That was completely unexpected, and that never happens here. It really just boils down to claims are happening more frequently and are more expensive than ever. Insurance companies just can't get the rate they need approved fast enough from the Department of Insurance. So when you can't price things properly to account for what you're paying out, especially in a short period of time, the other option for insurance companies is to slow down or stop business altogether in a particular area. And so that's what you've seen in the news with some of the bigger companies out there that have, paused new business on homes in California. Other companies are doing things on the auto side as well. So that's really
So
it.
so let me ask, is this something that's temporary? Is it something we should all be worried about or
I don't have a crystal ball. Otherwise, I would have won the Powerball last week. Historically speaking, this sort of thing, I mean, it's happened before in other areas of the industry. I know when I first started back in 2008, we couldn't write any work comp. We had a pause on work comp. And
Oh,
so a lot of insurance companies in California paused new home policies after the Northridge earthquake too, because back then earthquake insurance used to be included with a basic home insurance policy. So based on history, it's not going to last forever. And that said, in my opinion, I think it'll be a slower and more gradual process to get back to a more stable place because we've never really seen claims come in at this rate before. But at the end of the day, the big insurance companies, Farmers has been around almost 100 years. Allstate's been around over 90 years. I mean, the big insurance companies have been around a long time. They'll figure it all out.
So I think of what comes down to, you kept mentioning pause, like you said, to kind of catch up. So when we hear of some of the companies pulling out of Florida for, hurricane insurance or wildfire here, it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, we're gone. You're never going to see us again type deal.
It doesn't. No.
Right.
Yeah. And I know like State Farm was made it very clear that it's a pause on new business. Right. So they'll be back eventually. When, I don't know, but yeah, this is just something it's a rough patch and I think it's temporary.
Sure. Okay. Last week on the podcast, we discussed the nuts and bolts of insurance policies for rental properties. We talked all about house hackers, single family home rentals, all the way up to multifamily units. and what kind of coverage was important in each circumstance. Now, from an expert's perspective, can you give us a breakdown, kind of the basics of a property policy, what it covers, what it doesn't cover, and what are some of the riders or endorsements that rental property owners should consider adding to their policy?
Yeah. So it's really going to depend on the number of units, first off. Every company is different in how they classify rental properties, whether it be residential or commercial. But just really generally speaking, a policy for a rental property is pretty similar to a home insurance policy for your primary home. There are a few key differences. Number one is going to basically be you have coverage for your rental income. So, for example, let's say you have a fire and you have to rebuild the home for 6 months, and obviously you can't have a tenant in there when you're rebuilding from the fire. So what a rental property policy will do is it'll cover that lost rental income. That's called typically loss of rents coverage. So that's number one. Number two, your liability is going to be a little bit different. You're going to have not just bodily injury or property damage liability, but liability for things like if you have to get rid of a tenant and they sue you for wrongful eviction or discrimination. So there's a couple of pieces on the liability coverage that are going to come into play with a rental property policy. And then lastly, your personal property coverage. It's going to be a lot less with a rental property. And you can increase that if you have a home that you're furnishing for a tenant. But I mean, typically you don't do that. So your coverage is going to be a lot less because it's only going to really cover appliances and stuff that comes with the home. It is not going to cover any of the tenant's personal property. The tenant's going to be responsible for their own renter's insurance policy that would cover their own personal property. So those are the key differences. And then a couple of things not covered. I always like to mention this too. The big things, at least in California, that are not covered are going to be flood, earthquake. Those are two items that you would need a separate policy for. And then the third thing, this is a conversation I have a lot, is anything that's damaged due to wear and tear. So if you have like a leak in your roof, but your roof's 50 years old, it's just because it's an old roof, or your fence falls down, but your fence is 30 years old and it just needed to be replaced. Those sorts of things, no insurance company is going to cover you for. That just goes along with the perils of being a homeowner.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
and that's why we always stress to people to make sure that they're doing preventative maintenance and checking
Exactly.
these things and doing inspections to stay on top of it so they know what's coming.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, one thing you didn't mention, which we learned a lot about this last couple years, is vacancy insurance. I believe that's a rider as well that gets added on.
Yeah. So that's typically something that it could either be added on as a rider or, some companies will have their own like a specific policy, like a vacant home policy.
Right. But I think a lot of rental property owners don't know about the vacancy insurance rider or endorsement, whatever you want to call it. And as many of you have heard in the past, we have a single family home rental that was used for our son and his roommates during college. And they all graduated and moved out, and we had the property vacant because we wanted to do some much needed renovations after all the college kids had been living in there. And
Sure.
through conversations with Ryan and your brother, Michael, we were advised to add a vacancy rider to the home, which we actually ended up needing due to a burst water supply line that flooded a third of the home, and the water ran for about 3 days. So can you tell us a little bit about vacancy insurance and who it's for and why it's so important?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I remember that claim. That was,
Oh, so do we.
yeah, I'm sure. So, I mean, vacant home insurance it's basically specialty home insurance coverage for properties that are uninhabited. So, a property that's empty for a significant amount of time. So, typically, a home insurance policy is not going to cover most claims on a vacant property because a lot of them have what's called vacancy clauses, which is either going to restrict or even exclude coverage on properties that have been vacant for a period of time. Typically, it's 30 days. Some companies will say 60 days. It'll just depend on the insurance company. But the reason is vacant homes are more vulnerable to things like theft, vandalism, and just other damage. So insurance companies would rather not take on the risk by allowing coverage with your typical home policy. And without someone there to watch over the property, the home is going to be more vulnerable to these things. And there's also no one there to discover things like a water leak, as you guys know,
Nope.
or even to like report a fire early on, right? So the home can also incur more damage from things like a burst pipe or a fire. So you'll want to talk to your carrier to find out what their specific roles are. And if it's as simple as adding an endorsement, like I said, you may have to switch to a different policy type altogether while the home's vacant. But yeah, it's usually one of those two areas. So I would just talk to your specific carrier and find out what their rules are and just let them know what's going on so they can make the adjustments for you. Because at the end of the day, you just don't want something to happen and find out there's either limited or no coverage at all.
Exactly. And we'll get to that later on in the interview, but another good example of keep in contact with your agents. And yeah, it's
Exactly right. Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
as Ryan knows, we have umbrella policies for our home and also for our business. So let's talk a little bit about umbrella policies. Now, are those only for rental property owners who own a lot of rental property or maybe have a lot of personal assets they want to protect? And basically, who needs one and who doesn't?
Yeah. So let me give you a typical like insurance guy answer. I think personally, umbrellas are pretty much good for anyone that has assets they want to protect. Now, what it basically is, it's liability. Well, first off, liability coverage is going to be limited for your basic auto and home insurance policies. It's usually a max of 500,000 or a million. So this gives you an extension of liability coverage on top of that. And what it really does is it's going to shine the spotlight or put the focus on the insurance company and away from your assets and anything that you own. Now, the reason why I say for almost anyone is in California, you can also have future wages garnished for up to 10 years after any sort of liability claim, which a lot of people don't realize. I have the conversation a lot of, well, I rent a home. I don't really own anything. So, I mean, if I get sued, they can't, there's nothing for them to take. In California, you can have a portion of your wages garnished for up to 10 years. So it's important to factor in your future earning potential along with your other assets. So that's why I say if you have any sort of future earning potential or assets, an umbrella is a good idea because again, it puts the focus on the insurance and not on you.
Yeah, yeah, didn't realize that either. So my follow-up was, okay, so for landlords who hold their rental property in an LLC to protect their personal assets, is having an umbrella policy overkill, or would you still recommend one?
So that's a great question. That's kind of treading down into a conversation you would want to have with an attorney. But lucky for you guys with, with this interview, or lucky for me, I guess, both of my wife's parents are retired attorneys.
Oh,
And my father-in-law is actually a retired judge. So I was
Wow.
talking to them. I was talking to them on Saturday night, and I brought this up for the sake of this podcast. And what my father-in-law said is, with an LLC, he's basically said it's like another layer. He used the analogy of having a castle with like a moat. He said it's like another extending your moat. So it's like another layer of protection for you. There are no guarantees in the law. If you have it in LLC, there's not a guarantee that they can't come up after your personal assets. He also shared a story of a lady that owned a LLC, but she was kind of loose with the accounting as far as the personal assets and kind of mixing them with her, just basically not having all I's dotted and T's crossed with the LLC and her personal assets. So after a lawsuit happened, she was named personally in the lawsuit as on top of the LLC. So
yeah.
basically, long story short, yeah, it's another layer of protection, but there are no guarantees in the law that you're going to be personally protected if you have the rental property in LLC. And another point he made was most of the time as a judge, if you have a good amount of insurance, the other attorney is going to be more apt or quicker to basically just take the limits and be done with it and settle and not drag anything out in court. So in short, I guess, yeah, an LLC is going to give you another layer of protection, but it's not going to guarantee that that other person will go after you personally as
Which is why we have an LLC and we have a very significant umbrella policy there. So,
Definitely.
especially because we have 3 boys, or had 3 boys on the policy, all as teenage drivers, right? And a lot of people coming and going on all of our rental properties. So we are happy to pay for that additional coverage. But I'm going to switch gears here a little. We had a follower submit a question for you, and we realize it's not your claim, but do your best to help us understand what happened here. So Tim owns a 9-unit building in Massachusetts, which had an electrical fire that affected 3 units, one with the fire and the other 2 with water, or all 3, I guess, with water damage. After the claim was filed and all issues were resolved, his insurance company dropped his coverage on that building. And his agent is telling him that he's having trouble placing it, I'm assuming with another carrier. Do you have any insight or advice for Tim?
Yeah. So what I would ask him is, I'm assuming he's working with a broker if he's trying to, place it with another company. My advice would be for him to ask the broker which companies he's asking for quotes from, because a lot of brokers, they'll have access to various carriers, but there are companies out there that brokers may not have access to. And that's companies like Farmers, AAA, State Farm, Allstate, where you basically would need a specific agent that's appointed with that company directly in order to have access to their policies. So my best advice is really just to shop around on your own with some of these other companies that the broker or the agent may not have access to.
All right. Well, hopefully Tim and other landlords that might be in that situation heeds that advice. We have a lot of rental property owners who are just starting out, and many of them are buying property in a different state from where they already have an established relationship with an insurance company. And often they get referrals from a realtor or a loan broker, but they really don't know anything about the insurance broker or their company. Can you give us, 5 questions or so these landlords should be asking when interviewing for a new insurance broker?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Now, what a couple of things I would ask, or a couple of things I get asked, I guess, was what types of insurance policies do you specialize in? Because you want somebody that does a lot of these, right? And that's gone through the claims experiences, and somebody that's more well versed on that. It just wouldn't make sense if somebody's real auto heavy for them to be handling a bunch of your rental properties if they're not well versed in it. Basically, if it's a broker, I would ask, what insurance companies do you represent? Which policies do they offer? I would ask about claims handling. How do you assist clients with filing claims? How does the claims experience usually go? Do you have any stories of a successful claim settlement you've helped clients with? And then I would ask about communication. How often do you typically communicate with your clients? Are you going to reach out to me to review these policies? How often do you review policies? How accessible are you in the event of an emergency, or if I have a question? Those are definitely some things I would ask.
Yeah, and I'm sure that those agents will appreciate working with landlords that seem to have all their ducks in a row. I mean, obviously, you guys follow up all the time. That's how you found out about the home being vacant, was just, we had a conversation. I was talking about another instance, and you said, "How's everything going with the other properties?" And I kind of said, "Oh, Aaron moved out and now it's vacant." And you're like, "Okay, well, we need to do this." So I was appreciative of that. And I think that that's one place where landlords really need to work on getting a broker or an insurance agent that really is focused on what their needs are, because that's what's important.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say this to customers and prospects. It's just no two people are alike, right? So that sounds cliche, but I mean, everybody has a different need. We have clients that never want to hear from us, and they'll just reach out to us whenever they need something. Then we have clients that we reach out to very often, and everywhere in between, right? So yeah, you want to have, in my opinion, you want to have somebody that's going to really find out what you are looking for individually and tailor a package to your individual needs.
All right. You're with farmers, and they like to market like crazy things that people submit claims for. So tell us, do you have a couple juicy stories of any lessons learned from your or maybe an associate's clients about rental property insurance claims?
So yeah, I was talking to Mike about this morning. And first one, I remember my dad used to tell us this one. We had a client who had a burglar, was trying to break into their house and was on the roof and fell off the roof, and ended up suing the homeowner for their injuries of falling off the roof on their property.
Lovely.
Right. So that was, yeah. So only in California.
I wonder if he was going to claim lost income from his occupation.
That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but probably. Another one that this happened probably a couple years ago. We had a client who has several rental properties. The tenant actually passed away in one of the rental properties. And when they discovered him, it turned out that he had turned basically the whole inside of the property into an indoor weed farm.
Oh,
And we covered get the house back in working order or in shape to be rented out again with a bunch of hazmat cleanup and those sorts of things. So that was another interesting one. And then we just had a recent one where we had a client who was taking a shower, and it was a glass shower door, and slammed the shower door shut and it broke. And he sued the landlord for injuries in the broken shower door.
Okay, that's funny. I'll let Stacy say why.
so when we were on vacation, I think our first vacation to Europe, and our youngest was probably 12 or 13 years old, something like that. And he's sharing a room with his brothers, and we're in Italy. And he goes in, and it was like an accordion door, and he didn't know how it worked. And so he forced it, and it broke, and it shattered everywhere. I mean, glass went underneath the door, and he's in there crying, he's upset. And I know that one of his brothers, who was a football player at the time, went in and picked him up and carried him over glass and got him out. But the hotel charged us for that door and said it was because he was negligent. And we're like, well, no, your doors are weird. So anyway, long story short, the credit card company did cover it for us, saying it was kind of lame, but there's our little shower door story.
Yeah. It sounds like it was something pretty similar.
We're almost done here. I just want to do kind of a quick round. I think I have about 4 questions here, just kind of quick answers if you could. What is one of the shortfall or mistakes you see rental property owners make when it comes to their rental insurance policies?
Biggest thing that I'd say is going for the cheapest policy out there and not really doing your homework and not having coverage or enough coverage. So basically shopping for price only.
Okay. We mentioned this earlier, but how often should landlords meet with their insurance brokers or agents to review their policies?
I always recommend at a minimum once per year. 2 times per year is good. But at a minimum once per year.
Okay.
And obviously, if you have a major change or plan on doing something major like a renovation, that's a perfect time to reach out, but minimum once a year.
Okay. Insurance costs, like everything we've talked before, are increasing even with no claims filed. So besides bundling, can you give us a few tips of what rental property owners can do to help minimize these increases?
Yeah. So I'd say a couple of big things: increase security measures like having security systems, burglar alarms, fire detection systems. That's all good stuff that can reduce the risk of damage or theft. Having safety measures like smoke alarms, fire extinguishers, proper building maintenance is good. A big one, and I always tell clients this, is have a higher deductible, especially on your properties. With a home claim, it's different than an auto claim, where auto claims happen more frequently. And with a home claim, you're typically looking at tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage when a home claim happens. So having a higher deductible is going to save you money in the long run. And when you're looking at something that's $50,000 to $100,000 worth of damage, the difference between a $1,000 deductible and a $3,000 deductible isn't going to be a whole lot in the grand scheme of things with the claim, but that could save you a lot of money over the years in the long run. And then, bundling policies. A lot of insurance companies give you discounts for bundling. So
Excellent. And the final one, we're going to tee it up here for you. How can our California listeners get in touch with you to discuss their insurance needs?
A couple of things. You can always email me directly, Ryan@thebravoagency.com. You can also check out our website. We actually just updated it, so it's great. bravoinsuranceragency.com. There's a bunch of information on there, as well as a form, like a contact us form that'll be sent to us directly if you fill out. And also, you can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, and those links are going to be on the website as well.
Nice. Well, I have to check out the website because I don't think I've done that yet. Well, you have been amazing, Ryan. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and being here for our listeners, because hearing directly from pros and hearing stories and things like that, that's how we learn best, right? Is by hearing where other people have had shortfalls or have learned lessons. So by you sharing your knowledge and everything with our listeners, I'm hoping that they're going to be able to contact their brokers or their agents and touch base with what their needs may be.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me. This is awesome, and it's an honor to be the first one.
There
Appreciate
you
it.
go.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. And again, like you said earlier, you're like family to us, so this was very easy for us to have this conversation. So we appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Okay. Thanks again, Ryan, and best to Mike, too.
Yeah. Take
Will
care.
do. Thanks.
Yeah, bye. Well, that was fun. It was just like all the in-person, on the phone, or Zoom calls we've ever done with those guys before.
Yeah. Every time we talk to them, I feel more and more confident that Ryan and Michael have our backs. I mean, did you know how he complimented me twice that I was asking great questions?
Oh, absolutely, Kevin. You the man. And where would I be without you? So we hope you enjoyed our Q&A session with Ryan Bravo from Farmers Insurance. For our California listeners looking for great insurance agents, please reach out to them. They're great guys. And now for our standard housekeeping. If you want the podcast link delivered to your email, we have a free newsletter called Landlord Weekly that we send to our subscribers. It comes out every Tuesday. It includes all kinds of tips, early access to our blogs, landlord-specific articles written by other industry pros, our favorite landlord products that we really do use in our business, and the most recent link to the podcast. You can subscribe at yourlandlordresource.com/subscribe. That's yourlandlordresource.com/subscribe. And we'll also include the link to subscribe in the show notes. We really appreciate all of you taking the time to listen to what we have to say and that you find our podcast helpful and useful. Please share our show with other landlords to help get the word out, and subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast platform. It helps us to move up the charts and get recognized by other DIY rental property owners. And if you don't mind, could you please take a moment to leave a kind review of this podcast? That is the best way for other landlords to see how great our podcast is. So, I'm Stacy, signing off with Kevin, and until next time, you've got this, landlords.